A politician. He ran for mayor of San Diego and got a substantial fraction of the votes. Unfortunately, didn't win. In any case, he has some very practical solutions to many of the problems that face us, and he's going to tell you about those.
Thank you. I have two books out. This one here is called Achieving Economic Security on Spaceship Earth. This is my first book, so if you go to my website, which is www.jimbell.com, you just click on Jim's first book, and the book will come up in HTML, which means you can print out little pieces of it if you want, the whole thing. But it's completely free, and everything on my website is free. This is my latest book, which is actually the update of this last chapter of this book when this first came out. And it's called Creating a Sustainable Economy and Future on Our Planet. Subtitle, The San Diego Tijuana Region, a Case Study. But what's really important is that even though I lay out I think a very solid economic plan to create a life support sustaining economy in our region, which would mean we would be completely renewable energy, water, and food self-sufficient, and we would have land use planning that would correspond to that, which I'll get into when I get into the talk. When we import, but it shows that it would actually improve or greatly increase our economy. I'll just mention one factor, because right now, we import 98% of our energy, 90% of our water, 90% of our food. That means we're exporting about $20 billion a year to some other part of the world out of our economy. As soon as that money leaves the border of the county or the region, it creates no jobs, no business opportunities, no tax revenue for local communities. Okay, if we became renewable energy, water, and food self-sufficient, that $20 billion would be returned to our economy in the form of business and job opportunities, but it basically reverses a $20 billion negative cash flow out of the county each year into a positive cash flow, plus becoming self-sufficient in those essentials gives us the best security we possibly can have to the events that are happening around the world and now affect us so much every time there's a hiccup in the Middle East. Oil prices go up 10 cents. Well, first of all, I want to formally apologize to you for all the bad things and problems that my generation and the generations before my generations have left you to solve. I mean, it's like I was completely unaware. I finally discovered the environment. I was, I think, 34, 35 years old before I realized that, hey, we're the human family, all of us just going about doing everything we do, all of you, and you're all participating in it too right now, no matter, even if you try to be conscious, because the world is sort of stacked against us. So I want to apologize, but that's the past. We can't change that. What's happened up to this point, we have no way to change that, but we can change the future. First of all, I want to reiterate this, even though my presentation focuses on this region, it's not really about this region. I mean, it is and it isn't. I kind of hope that our region becomes the first region to actually create a life support sustaining economy. Because I think if we begin to do it, even if we begin to do it seriously, on our way, it'll be so attractive economically, environmentally, and socially, and in every other way that everybody in the world will want to do it. And that's what we have to do. If we're going to really save ourselves on this planet, this has to be done globally in every country, in every region. And that brings us back to our planet. This is our guide. We have to ask ourselves, what's happening here? And what I recommend that you do, and what I'm still doing, because it's almost like a forever challenge, is to understand on a deeper and deeper level how this life support system works, and then how we can use that knowledge so we can do everything that we need and want to do. Like we could be in this room that's full of toxic materials and everything, but we could be in this room that would have no toxic materials in it. And everything in here, when it wore out, would be completely biodegradable and break down into nature, or it could be recycled forever into new products, into new industries. And there'd be very little going out and mining and harvesting of raw materials because we don't need it, because we keep recycling the materials that are already in the system. We convert all their landfills into resource recovery centers. And we, most importantly, just make sure that everything is designed so that it's designed at the beginning, whether it's a laptop or anything, so that at the end of its life it can be easily recycled, and if it gets lost in nature, it'll break down and biodegrade in some way that won't cause some other bioaccumulation of toxins in the environment. This is all completely technically possible to do, but we don't look at this whole picture when we do it, and we don't even include the true cost. We don't look at all the costs associated with the way we do it now. It's just like, what does it cost to manufacture to make this thing that's attractive so I'll buy it, useful, even though it isn't designed to be used to recycle. So once again, as we're looking at this, we always have to go back to this as our model. Okay, this is the San Diego-Tijuana region. This is about Oceanside here, San Diego, Tijuana, Ensenada down here. And what I've done is basically broken it up into its principal watersheds or watershed areas. Any rain that falls east of that line flows down the mountains into the desert. West of that line flows down the mountains toward the coast. This is the Tijuana River watershed. Any water that falls inside of these lines all ends up in the Tijuana River if it isn't captured behind a reservoir. This is the information that we need to know to answer the very first fundamental question. And the first question is, where in the region is it appropriate to do what? On the land, off the coast, whatever. Things like, well, maybe it's not too smart to build in the floodplain because it does flood and it's going to cause damage, it's going to cost us money. A lot of good economic reasons for not doing it, a lot of good ecological reasons for not doing it. And I'm going to just kind of flash through a series of maps really quickly. So we're looking at our watersheds as natural planning units. These are wildlife corridors, so animals can move from one valley across bases to other valleys, so they're not isolated in one little place. Geology, this tells us where our groundwater is stored and things like that, very valuable information. So we're basically gathering information to figure out, how do we use what we have in the most effective way in order to achieve the sustainable future that we want. This is a soils map where it did the details. 74 different soil types in one small drainage basin. This is actually the Los Penasquitos drainage basin, which empties into the Sereno Valley drainage basin and goes into the ocean just a little bit south of Del Mar, there between Torrey Pines and Del Mar. 74 different soil types, and then isolating only the best agricultural soils. You can see there's much fewer of them. And then we look at the whole region. We basically are looking at our 4 best agricultural soils. The red being the very best, which is found in the more developed valleys. The orange in the less developed valleys, and then the green is like our blufflands, like the flowers. If you drive up the coast, you see the flower fields. That's bluffland. That's good agricultural soil. Number 3 best agricultural soil. The brown is number 4. We have enough soils here to feed ourselves easily if we have the water. And I'll talk about that a little bit later, how to get the water. But we have to stop developing our agricultural soils, and we have to stop using them poorly. We have to stop poisoning them, and we have to stop using them in ways that cause them to erode. We have to stop building in floodplains. Floodplains flood. They're also subject to liquefaction during earthquakes. So it's not a good idea, not smart. This actually shows what would happen if one of the dams upstream of Mission Valley broke when it was full of water, either Capitan or San Vicente. And in some places, the water would be over 40 feet deep. Down further in the valley, it would, even down there by Mission Valley, water would be over 20 feet deep. So not a very pretty picture. Then you put it all together in a map like this, which basically shows the white areas are the places that makes more sense to develop if you're going to have people living here. And the green areas, which in this case only include number 1 and number 2 soils, not 3 and 4, the green areas are definitely where you shouldn't develop. They're the wildlife corridors, where the groundwater storage, they flood, they're good agricultural soil. All these reasons why we should be developing there. And that, all that information and a whole lot more that goes with it is all about answering that very first question. If we want to live here sustainably, where is it appropriate to do what on the land? And in this case, we included off the coast. The dark area here represents where kelp grows right now. The reason it grows there is because there's a reef out there for it to grab hold of. It doesn't grow here, even though the depths are correct, because the bottom is sandy. You might say, well, gee, we have to be careful if we're going to change that, but there's the possibility that as we gradually take buildings out of the floodplain, like in Mission Valley, that we could use the concrete materials and add it on to the existing reef and let the kelp system colonize it. So we actually, in effect, become reef building. And of course, that would mean more lobster and fish and abalone and all the different creatures that live on expanded kelp system. It's a little more complicated than that, but it's definitely a potential. Okay, after we've answered the question, where do you do the what, then you have to figure out, well, how do you do the what? Like in building houses, for example. I'm just going to show you a couple of examples real quick. These are houses in the middle of Canada, about 225 miles north of the Montana-Canadian border. Very cold, 60 degrees below zero. Is not out of the, nothing unusual. And yet these houses, which had 2,000 square foot of floor space, had heating bills between $59 and $143 per year. Per year. In a very, very cold place. How did they do it? Here's some other examples. First of all, they made the outside walls 12 inches thick and filled them with insulation. They actually used cellulose made out of recycled newspaper. They put 2 feet of it up in the attic. They were very careful to seal it up so there weren't a lot of cracks and drafts. If the blizzards are going through, you don't want exactly to have drafts coming into your house. So they did a good job of that. But if you do build buildings that tightly constructed and that well insulated, you're going to get a buildup of toxins if there's any toxins in the building. Which could be anything from the carpet to the glue that's holding the veneer on the cabinet, the way things are made now. Even CO2 buildup, or if you have a roommate that doesn't shower often enough, a little problem there maybe. So what they do is they install this device. It's basically just a box, and it has a little fan in it. It's called the air-to-air heat exchanger, and as the warm, stale air is going out of the room through the box and being dumped out, it gets cooled off, and the cold air coming in goes through the box and gets warmed up, and then is released at the floor so that it creates a convectional current. What heats the air that's coming in? The air that's going out. So that's why it's called a heat exchanger. So basically it's going one to the other. Okay. And this is what it looks like on the inside. And then this is a straw bale house. You build the houses in big straw bales like bales of hay, and they're actually better insulated than those houses in Canada. More efficient refrigerators. You put the motor, compressor, and condenser on top instead of underneath and behind it, so the heat that they give off goes away from the refrigerator, and you give it a little better insulation, better seal on the door, and you're using like 1/10 of the energy you use in a typical refrigerator to get the same job done. So lots of things possible. The integration of industry and waste heat and things like that to help do different jobs. More efficient motors, more efficient lights, more efficient land use. In Japan, some scientists, this was quite a while ago, were basically projecting that Japan, that's already twice as energy efficient as we are, both in industry and per capita use, could actually become completely renewable energy self-sufficient, replacing all the gas or all the oil that it now imports. And if Japan can do it, which has a colder climate than we do, a smaller land area, Japan only has half the land area of California, and yet has half the population of the United States. And then this basically shows our solar potential. Like this is Germany's best right here. This is our worst up here. And yet Germany's buying all the panels in the world. And I think what they know that we haven't figured out yet is that peak oil is coming, that we're going to hit a very big block in terms of our dependence on fossil fuels. And they're trying to utilize renewable energy as fast as possible so that when that does hit, the blow will be softened. And if it doesn't hit long enough and we do what's right, it won't hit us at all. It doesn't have to be a problem whatsoever. This was the correction that's in the book. If you happen to pick up one of my books that are printed, this area of parking lot, based on the data I had, seemed to be reasonable. But I subsequently found, after analyzing this map of Chula Vista, that it really should be more like this. But it still shows that you could become completely renewable energy self-sufficient just by putting solar panels on tops of roads and parking lots. It's just going to take a higher percentage. And in this case, if we were able to achieve a 40% increase in efficient energy use across the board, we would only need about 51% coverage of our roads and parking lots to not just be electricity self-sufficient, but to be completely renewable energy self-sufficient, replacing gasoline, diesel, natural gas, everything. So that shows that it's definitely possible, and that's just roads and parking lots. I didn't include streets. You could easily put panels along the edge of streets where cars park. Lots of wiggle room in those numbers, and it's assuming only 10% efficiency for the solar panels, which is very conservative at this time. This is OB People's Food Store. I'm on the board of directors here, and we're producing about a third of our energy. And I'm going to skip through some of this because we're not going to have time for the questions. This next section deals with water. This is the Colorado River Aqueduct bringing water in from the Colorado River. This is the Northern California Aqueduct bringing water into the LA area and then finally down to the San Diego aqueducts to us. These red lines represent the San Andreas, the San Jacinto, and the Elsinore earthquake faults. There's literally hundreds of earthquake faults along there, and then also we live in the age of terrorism. Okay, this is not a very secure water system. So I began thinking about this a while ago, and my first response was, well, gee, we just have to use it more efficiently. And I did, spent hours and hours and days calculating, how much water you could use per capita within the natural rainfall totals and how much storage you would need to make sure that you had it when it didn't come. And I wasn't really much of a fan of reverse osmosis. How many of you have heard of reverse osmosis? Not quite a few. Okay. Basically, you can pump water through a membrane, and it basically, the water that comes out is pretty salt-free. Like you can pump seawater through a membrane, and when the water comes through, it's pretty much salt-free. Not completely, but it's definitely as good as the Colorado River water. And I always thought, well, if you're doing that, all you're doing is trading fossil fuel energy for water, and that's obviously not sustainable. And when I began doing these calculations about how much sun energy we can produce, and making these calculations, I started thinking, well, maybe we could make a dent in our water supply through reverse osmosis. And I went on the web and I found different countries and islands where they use it exclusively, and talked with some experts in the field. I got phone numbers and called people up. And it turned out that you could expect about 50 gallons of fresh water directly from seawater per kilowatt hour of electricity consumed. Now, my first question to these people was, well, with your system, how many gallons of fresh water do you produce per kilowatt hour consumed? They had never heard that question before, because they're always thinking about dollars and money. But I started thinking, well, gee, if we install these solar panels, and once you pay them off, they basically keep producing electricity for free. Why not install more, and then you have enough to get some fresh water from the ocean? But I was, to my amazement, at 50 gallons per kilowatt hour, it would only take 8.3 square miles of solar panels to become completely water self-sufficient, to replace all the water currently used in San Diego County today. Now, the one issue is like, well, you're going to take water from the ocean. That means you've got to make sure you don't suck in wildlife and cause ecological problems in the process. That's a filtering problem. That's an intake problem. I think that can be solved. And then on the other end of it, after you've taken the fresh water out, the water that's left over is twice as salty, so you got to put that back in the ocean. And you don't want to put it back in the ocean, like you're a fish, and all of a sudden you swim into a wall of water that's twice as salty as what you're normally used to. So you have to diffuse it before it gets back out there. And they're actually doing this now. So before it even gets to the ocean, it's already diffused, where it's only maybe a couple of percent saltier than when it came in. And so to become completely energy self-sufficient, we need to install about 50 square miles, 50 or so square miles of solar panels with a 40% increase in efficiency. But to become water self-sufficient, we need to only add another 10 square miles of solar panels to do that. So now at 60 square miles with 40% increase in efficiency, we're completely energy and water self-sufficient in our region. Okay, if we're water self-sufficient and we want to grow food, now we have water, now we can grow food. And if we need more water, we add a few more square miles of solar panels to provide the energy to convert the seawater into fresh water. And even in energy storage, we can pump seawater from the ocean to the top of the mountains and run it back down through turbines at nighttime to make electricity back into the ocean. In this case, you're not even changing the salinity of the water, you're just moving it from one place to the other. When you have the energy in the daytime, you pump the water up. When you don't have the energy, the water runs downhill and produces the power that you need. To get back to the water here, so what do we do with water? It's really the same thing as with energy. use water more efficiently. Low flow showers, low flow toilets. A lot of these are very standard now. Composting toilets make sense. Tensiometers, these tell the monitors of your irrigation how much, whether there's water needed or not when the irrigation goes on. Because they directly sense the moisture available to plants and the soil. Then you hook that all up with efficient irrigation equipment, so you're getting water exactly where you need when you do irrigate, whether it's in agriculture or in industry or just domestic use. Gray water systems, they're technically legal, but the ones the county wants you to do are very stringent and don't really make that much sense in my view. But I noticed there's no gray water police out there, so I run my washing machine water, and these trees that ends up are like growing like crazy. And of course, I use biodegradable soap, and I'm very careful about what I put down the drain. You know, it's when it's in your own backyard, you want to be more careful about those things. So you can recycle the water, drought-tolerant landscaping. Landscape scenes like this, you don't need to water them once they're established. And so you have plenty of water. You have your gray water system to grow a garden or fruit trees or a little bit of grass in the back to take in some sun. So what you end up with is where your water service level is actually very high, actually better than it may have been before, but the actual amount of water you're consuming is much less because you use it once efficiently and then you recycle it into your gray water system to use it again. This is Ecological. This is a plant that takes sewage water and recycle it and turn it into irrigation water and compost. It's on the right about halfway between the two border crossings above the river on the north slope, actually facing south, the north slope, I guess you would say. And we're taking raw sewage out of the pipe that runs down the road, running it through a process, collecting the residues, screening them out, and then composting them, clarifying the water here. You can sort of see the greenery starting to happen. I have to get a new slide here because the one I have doesn't give it justice, but from here it gets pumped up the hill, and then that water is used for irrigation. So theoretically, you can have a wastewater treatment or sewage treatment plant where nothing goes in the ocean. The solids are composted, the water is used for irrigation. And in effect, the soil where you use the irrigation becomes the tertiary treatment process for the water. The plants, the tertiary plants, love those nutrients and will turn them quickly into biomass. And then you can sort of see all the greenery here. The whole thing now is all green, but this was, the first stage of it. And what's happened is like all kinds of wildlife have come back to the area. People come here all the time. They actually have picnics here and weddings. It's all beautiful. And a developer built some houses down below it. Now all this down here is all like kind of luxury houses. So we took sewage, converted it into this big green area. When they put on their sign to attract people to come and live there, they said, "Come live next to Ecological." By taking this nasty, icky thing and turning it into something positive, it did a lot of positive economically and otherwise. And then a collection of water. This doesn't show it, which is the point. There's a water tank underneath this tennis court, collecting rainwater. And this is kind of how these tanks are constructed. And you can build them, anywhere you have water. You can cover them and have, parks and recreation areas all around them. The idea is that you would have one or more of these in every community, and on top of them there would be a park, a community garden, or a soccer field, depending on the size of the tank and whatever the people in the community decided. And you would have water storage. Now this is important because if there is a disaster, say there's a big earthquake, and we may have a reservoir out 20 miles away from us, and it may not fail in the earthquake, but it's quite likely the pipe between you and that reservoir is going to fail. But if you have water in your community, you have it right where you need it in case there's a serious problem. So you want to create your system for sustainability, kind of like nature is, sort of a redundancy. It would be, if you had a good place to do it, it'd be perfectly fine to have a cistern in your backyard. It could be above ground, it could be below ground, it's up to you. So that you have water that you could actually collect from your rooftop. And every 1,000 square feet of rooftop at a 12 inches of rainfall represents 7,500 gallons of water. So if you've got a 2,000 square foot house, 15,000 gallons of water, it's enough to give you 40 gallons a day for virtually forever if the rainfall holds. But in any case, you're going to be in better shape than other people. But as a political figure, as somebody who's likely to run for mayor again, I would be directing this to happen and to get it financed. I mean, the whole idea is that as you're moving towards a sustainable economy, you're actually creating all these new employment opportunities. And guess what? Instead of doing things to make money that are actually ultimately bad for the planet, you'd be doing things to make money that are ultimately good for the planet. And that's the bottom line here. See anything else I got? Oh, this will be the last one I'll show. This is Mission Valley of the future. And it's a real river. And along the river, you have wildlife corridors, and you have corridors that go up the side canyons like Texas Street, across the mesa to the next canyon. So a coyote or a bobcat are animals that would known to be in that habitat can move around. Then you have your agricultural aspects to it. Connected with it, you're going to have a little different kind of agriculture where you're going to actually design it to maximize the habitat for the predators of the pests that might attack your crop and minimize the habitat for the pests that might attack your crop. So you have different kinds of plants spaced with something between them. So some kind of epidemic of a disease or a pest can't just move easily from one to the other. Plus, your wildlife corridors are going to have all kinds of animals in them, birds nesting and so forth. You can even design it a little bit, add a lot of tall trees so you have plenty of places for hawks and owls to nest, so they can take care of your gophers and ground squirrels and field mice and things like that. And you have snakes and coyotes and bobcats and things like that coming out of your wildlife corridors to help you in that case. So basically, the idea is that you can actually design a system that really works relatively automatically. And if, say, some pest didn't follow the program, we still have all kinds of non-toxic pest control methods to deal with them. And especially when you design your whole system to defeat them to begin with, it makes it much easier to address any kind of a problem or outbreak of a problem that might occur. Okay, well, we're right on time. Thank you very much. Somebody called me an information overload specialist, so if you're a little numb, don't mind that. It'll pass. But any questions or ideas or comments? Yes. Yes. Yes.
These ideas sound really good, but obviously they haven't been implemented. So why is that? There must be a downside somewhere if we aren't doing this.
I think that, when people ask me that, I think really the problem is ignorance. Like, people don't even know that this possibility exists. I mean, that's why I go out and try to share it with people. Can you get a show of hands? How many of you, after hearing this, and of course you didn't hear the whole thing, I'm sure you have some questions, how many of you would support a program like this? So, all right. And that's been my experience when I go out and do a presentation like this. Pretty much 100% get about 100% buy-in. And this is true, like, you guys are self-selected, right? You didn't have to take this course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, so you're like a special group. But even when I go into what I call a captive group, where people didn't want to go to an environmental lecture, they just got to fill their slot in their program to get the grade to go on to what they really want to do. Even in those groups, I generally get about 100% buy-in. What people will say to me, they'll sort of say the same thing you did. They'll say, but, and usually they'll say that, they don't usually say that, but they say, but the corporations won't let you do it, or the politicians won't let you do it. And those are legitimate, I think there's legitimate, problems. But it's like, if enough of you get it, and the reason I came to these ideas and things that go with it is that I finally got it. And if enough of you get it, then we can do anything. I mean, there's no limit to what we might do.
Road to consciousness.